Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Recently, I got to give a presentation to a room full of fundraising nonprofit leaders. And it was a great experience. My buddy Joel Kessel was hosting the group. And we spent some time talking about major gift effectiveness, ROI, what works, what doesn't. And I wanted to just share with you some of the stuff we talked about in that meeting. So it centered around that presentation. It centered around things that we're comfortable with versus things that we're not comfortable with, and why that is. So imagine, if you will, a chart, and on the horizontal axis, you have your perceived comfort of fundraising activity. And then on the vertical axis, you have fundraising effectiveness, 10 being the most comfortable, 10 being the most effective, right? So I don't know if you pay attention in your community, but I'm always seeing like bands, high school bands. I won't tell tell on you which school, but I will tell you my son goes there, and I remember him hitting me up to buy a mattress, and I look at him, I'm like, well, I have a mattress. Why would I want to buy a mattress? How often are people buying mattresses? But for whatever reason, his high school, that was the thing that they do. They sell mattresses. I recall early in my career selling mulch to raise money. We were doing an international trip. We went to southern India. We never did it again after that year, actually, because we spent so much time selling mulch that a lot of the regular work we did with youth just had to come to a screeching halt, because for a good month or two, I mean, I was just the mulch salesman, tracking people down and setting up deliveries and all that sort of thing. I remember at one point I got a parent who worked for, he did groundskeeping at a cemetery, a large cemetery, and raised a lot of money selling to him. But regardless, I don't know that that was the best use of my time. And of course, you got the Girl Scouts. And I love a frozen Samoa. Other states outside of Ohio call them caramel delights. Those are those cookies, they're round, they got a hole in the middle. There's coconut, chocolate, and caramel. They're amazing. And I know the kids selling the cookies, it's good leadership experience. They're learning to be entrepreneurial. There's lots of value there. And so I'm not saying that you could never give your kids or your volunteers something to sell to raise money. You could do that, and that could be a valuable thing. But it's not the way to raise money, guys. I hate to say it. The other thing that we do a lot of in my profession are events. We do silent auction banquets. I think I led maybe 7, maybe 8 of those early on in my career. We had an annual one that I did. Ultimately, when you look at an event, and I've mentioned this before in this podcast, but I'm going to keep saying it till people do what I ask. You need to not just look at your fundraising event gift receipt total and compare it against your expenses. You need to add up the personnel hours involved, including the volunteer ones, and assign $1 per hour value to those hours. And then include that in your tally. And then you tell me if you really made money. Maybe you did. Now, again, there are ways to do this that can be more effective than others. The Benavon model that's out there is an effective way to do it. I've seen that work well for an organization that is near to me and dear to me. And there is definitely value in events for awareness, to build momentum, to celebrate donors. There's a lot of good reasons to do events. But again, this is not the most effective way to raise money. And that's what my concern is. It's not those other things. So then why do we do them? Why do we spend so much time selling mulch and doing bake sales and holding car washes? Why do we put all this effort into year-end banquets to ask our donors for support? Well, I'll give you what I think is true. I think it's because it's comfortable. Fundraising sales, that's all about the transaction. I don't buy Girl Scout cookies because I love the mission of the Girl Scouts. I buy Girl Scout cookies because I like Girl Scout cookies. They're delicious. That's not meant to be a knock against the Girl Scouts. It's just, that's not, one of my philanthropic priorities. I might buy mulch from someplace because I need some mulch. Would I buy a mattress? I guess I could consider it. I'd want to lay on it first. But again, I would much rather have my son's high school band come to me and ask me for $100, because then I'd know where that $100 is going. That's the other thing with these sales is a large percentage of the profit is not going to the organization. It's going to the company that manufactures the pizza or the frozen pizza. I did that for a long time too. Shout out to Little Caesars. Their taco pizza, by the way. I don't know if they still make it, but they used to have a frozen like taco pizza that was delicious. It was so good. But you're making somebody else rich, and it's not the organization, right? But the reason we do these sales is because we're comfortable with transactional experiences. We have them every time we go to the grocery store. I need some strawberries. I'm going to give you money. You're going to give me strawberries. And I know you're going to make a profit because I want the store to stay open. I don't mind that. We do the thing that we're most comfortable with. We take the path of least resistance. I don't need to take it personally if someone says, nah, I don't need any strawberries today, right? Now, fundraising events too. We have a comfort level for events because people like parties. We throw birthday parties for people. We throw anniversary parties for people. We have holiday gatherings. We do events. We do dinners. We go out together. You might even consider that thing where you go and you get all your buddies together, your friends, and you do $1,000 of business at the local restaurant, and then they give you like, I don't know, $100, right? That and you feel like, oh, I've raised some money. Well, not really. You've just helped the bottom line of your restaurant, and they threw you a bone there. But fundraising events, we're comfortable with them because we like parties. We've got a category for it. Tom Dauber here for Abundant Vision Academy. Are you a nonprofit leader who's new to fundraising? Are you feeling crushed by your fundraising goals and not sure how to find success? My online class, crafted from my 25 years of experience and more than 5,000 donor meetings, Abundant Vision Academy will give you the confidence and understanding you need to start building relationships with donors and having gift discussions in just 110 minutes. You'll get 14 videos covering all the topics you need to find success in fundraising. You can take it at your own pace and can watch as many times as you'd like. This is one of the best deals in fundraising continuing education you can get today. To make sure you get off to a strong start in 2024, I'm offering a 50% discount to anyone signing up for my course this spring. That's a $375 value. Enter the coupon code SPRING2024 at checkout to claim your 50% discount. That's SPRING 2024. Head on over to thomas-dauber-s-school.teachable.com and click on Abundant Vision Academy to get your discount today. The link is in the podcast description. Now, when we think about other things we could do, there's annual campaigns, there's emails that we could send, there's social media blasts, there's GoFundMe type approaches. Um, People do those, and they do raise some money. And again, annual giving is valuable. It's a great way to begin to get a sense of who cares about your organization. But that isn't going to be, or at least it shouldn't be, 90% of your fundraising strategy for annual success, right? But why do we do it? Well, you ask a whole lot of people for something small. It feels safer because I'm not in front of anyone. No one's looking me in the eye and saying, "I would never support your organization," or "I don't have the money right now." There's no sense of personal interaction, and for the asker, there's no sense of personal rejection when they say no. It feels safe, and so we do it. But again, this is not the best way to raise money. I mean, there's an organization that I love to support. They mean a lot to me. They do very, very good work. And they've decided, I've heard them talking about this. They've decided that they're not going to raise money any other way than crowdfunding. And I hurt for them when I think about the potential for fundraising that they're just turning their back on, because they're never going to raise as much money asking everyone for a gift. What I mean, this is something I learned a long time ago. If you're facilitating a group, like a small group conversation, and you just throw a question out there's a pretty good likelihood that no one is going to respond. And that's because a question to everyone is a question to no one. Everyone else is going to think, oh, the guy next to me is going to answer the question. And giving's the same way. Well, I don't need to respond when my alma mater sends me a request for money, because there's 5,000 other people in my class, and one of them will give. It's fine. And if you do get a gift, it's usually small. $5, $10, maybe $100 if the person's fairly generous. But you're not going to get the person's best gift. It's not going to be a stretch for them. They're not going to be looking at their budget and saying, "Oh, what can we sacrifice so that we can make our annual gift this year in response to your giving letter?" Now, the next thing up the chart, and these are purely um, based on my thoughts and feelings. This is not a fact based chart that that I created, but just on my experience. I would put grant writing shortly behind that. And so what I mean is, in terms of being a little bit less comfortable, but a little bit more effective. And the reason I say that is because grant writing is typically done to foundations. And one thing you can always know about foundations is that uh, they exist for philanthropy's sake. So if my local community foundation has an annual open time when you can solicit, for a grant, well, they're expecting it from you. You're not putting them out by asking. You're not going to offend them by asking. It feels safer because that's what that type of organization is supposed to do. So again, it's a little bit more comfortable. Now, when grant writing, when grant writing works, it can be very effective. I am not begrudging anyone the grants. And you think about, what some of the more well-known, almost celebrity donors are doing these days. There's some massive grants being handed out to organizations, and I'm certain they're well deserved and done well. But the thing is grant writing is not the most effective thing that you can do. Now, I will say I worked with a grant writer in my last role who she caught lightning in a bottle. I mean, she was probably the most effective grant writer I've ever worked with in my entire life. I mean, she was hitting 50, 60%, maybe higher of everything she applied for. Um, Now, this was because she knew the organizations well, but she was also just a great writer. And and was having success. But I'll say for most of my career, when I've looked at grant writers, I've seen people that were maybe pulling in 5 to 10%, maybe more, but of the gifts they're soliciting. So you make up for it in volume. You ask for you write lots and lots of grants, right? Hoping that you'll get the gift. The one thing though with grants from foundations, even corporate grants in some ways, is you've got this big amount of work you have to do on the backside. Most of them have pretty stringent reporting requirements. So you've got to show the proof. Here's what we did with our money. Here's what the results were, and these can take a lot of time, and they're usually on some type of deadline. So to get that $10,000, maybe you've got to put 120 hours in of work, maybe 80, 40, something like that. You've got to put some time in um, to get this money and have any shot at getting continued funding from the organization. So it's a little bit less effective than the next two things I'm going to talk about. And you know what I do. You you probably, if you've listened to my fundraising podcast or looked at my website, I'm about the major gifts. Major gifts, sure, from foundations. I've done my share of that, but really from individuals. And corporations are in there too, but corporate gifts and foundation gifts have this in common, that it's usually a board of people making the decision. It's usually not just one or two people like you'd have with maybe a couple or an individual, right? And so you've got to convince 8, 9 people, maybe more, to give to you in order to get your gift. And even if you're building a relationship with the company or the foundation, what do you do when they leave? What do you do when there's turnover? Well, you're starting all over again. Not so with individuals. That's why I would argue that it's the most effective way you can raise money. So I would say that major gift fundraising is probably a 2 out of 10 on perceived comfort, because you're putting yourself out there. It might feel like personal rejection if they say no. It's not, but it might feel that way. But at the same time, you can sit down, if it's with the right person, and ask them for a gift that's maybe 10, 20% of your annual budget, maybe more. Can't really do that in any of these other efforts. Maybe grant writing, but it's unlikely. It's less likely, I should say. So if I can find someone who loves my organization, someone who is personally generous, someone who's wealthy, I can call them on the phone. I can schedule a lunch, and I can have a conversation with them about our organization. And I can ask them permission to begin having a gift conversation. And maybe that leads to another meeting where I actually solicit their gift. And then they may say yes on the spot, or they may say, well, hey, let me talk to my spouse about that, if their spouse or partner is not part of that conversation. And then you say, well, when should I follow up with you? And they'll give you a time frame, and you follow up with them, and then it's really that simple. And you can get the same gifts that you get from grant writing, maybe bigger ones even, but you don't have, all the rigorous reporting at the end of it. Now, you should provide some stewardship reporting. You should talk about impact of their giving. You should say thank you. You should do all those things. You should take them to see the work you're doing, to show them that the gift that they're making is making a difference. But it's so much simpler. Instead of having, 40 hours of your life invested in this grant that you've written, you might have 4. So that's 10 times the effectiveness of grant writing, but it's less comfortable. And then at the very top, I would say that planned giving discussions are the least comfortable, but they are the most effective. And the reason I say they're the most effective is most people's wealth is illiquid. The farmer's not going to give you his 1,000 acres because his livelihood comes from that 1,000 acres. But let's say his kids don't want to be in farming. Let's say he doesn't have kids, or she. Let's say the person doesn't have kids and they've got 1,000 acres of land and it's not going to go to anybody. Well, you could have a planned giving discussion with them. You could talk with that individual about, so what's going to happen to this land? You've enjoyed supporting our organization. Would you ever consider leaving this land to our organization to make sure that your support in the future continues on? Well, you could have that conversation. And so the reason why it's even more effective, I'd put that at a 10 out of 10, on the fundraising effectiveness scale compared to a 9 out of 10 for major gift fundraising, because the numbers you're dealing with are much larger, at least have the potential to be much larger. Even if you're talking about percentages of estates. I mean, there's folks that can leave your organization sizable gifts through their estate that could never give that to you in cash. However, I also put it at a 1 out of 1 in terms of being the least comfortable conversation to have. Because again, there's that feeling of potential rejection if you have a direct conversation, but you're also adding in the concept of mortality. And most people just don't like talking about mortality. They don't like talking about death. It's intimidating. It's scary. And truthfully, if I have an estate and I have children, which I do, if you ask me for a planned giving donation, well, to whatever extent I'm including you in my plans, that's a percentage that I'm not leaving to my kids. So to some extent, you're kind of asking them to, hey, instead of helping your kids, why don't you help us instead? Now, some donors are going to be right on that train. Either they don't like their kids, or maybe they want their kids to, earn their money the old-fashioned way rather than inherit it, right? But either way, there is that sense of, there's that sensitivity, because those types of plans can be tricky. But again, I will tell you, I've had many years of these conversations. Oftentimes, you'll find that wealthy people aren't even talking with their kids about estate planning because it's too sensitive. Maybe they don't trust one of their kids, and so they don't want to leave that person money. So they're like, well, I'm going to make these plans and not even talk to them about it because of all the hassle and pain it might cause. And so what ends up happening, oftentimes, the fundraiser in that situation almost sort of becomes like a confessor for that person. They start sharing with you things about their decisions pertaining to their estate. And they're telling you all these things about, their deepest thoughts about their kids and life and all these things. And it's wonderful to be entrusted with that type of information. But at the same time, there's a lot of weight to it. But the reality is, for many of them, they don't have anyone else to talk to about that. Maybe their financial planner, but even then, maybe not. This is what I wanted to say today. Fundraising effectiveness is inversely proportional to the perceived comfort of the fundraising activity. So if you want to raise the most money, you've got to learn to get past your fears and to become comfortable with asking people for money. And on the flip side, you need to take a hard look at your bake sales and your fundraising events and put an end to those if you can. Because that, in terms of solely fundraising efficiency, it's a terrible use of your time. It may have other values, but it's not great for fundraising. So if you're interested in that, come talk to me. I can teach you how to do it. Really, it's the sort of thing where anyone could do it. It's just a matter of doing it a lot. I've done it a lot, and I'm comfortable with it now. And you can be too. So anyway, that's what I've got for this week. Look forward to talking with you again sometime in the future. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. As always, I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together toward major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.